ain't here to negotiate. Unity is all we need. Future's ours at God's speed. Can't fall for no division. Divide and conquer is their mission. So they hid our history, but now we know our legacy. Yeah. Africa, the foundation. Black wealth for generations. Home is where the heart is. They can't do nothing about this. It's the awakening. They ain't ready for the reckoning. No Wakanda, this is Africa. Black wealth, this the black Mecca. Elders kept the dream alive. Gave us vision, so we gon' thrive. Free your mind, don't fall behind. The real truth ain't hard to find. Corporations in cooperation. The new Africa in operation. Building the homeland, calling our people to the motherland. Allow it, this is destiny. We here now, it's reality, yeah. It's the African dream. Melanin is the light.
Welcome to the Africa Must Unite podcast. A podcast dedicated to inspiring African people worldwide to rise up, organize, and struggle for Pan-Africanism, a unified, liberated socialist Africa, the only permanent solution to the exploitation and oppression of African people, no matter where they happen to be born or to live in the world. Now please, welcome the hosts of Africa Must Unite.
Building the black Mecca, calculated like algebra. 2050 is the future, bro. What? Yeah, eyes open, we see the vision. Building Africa, the only mission. Like Omar, if I thunder, we be Pan-African all day. The time is now, this is a moment. We ain't asleep, we ain't dumb. All day, every day, we building our shit.
And I'm Kim Juve.
And this is the Africa Must Unite podcast. And we are from the Pan-African Revolutionary Socialist Party, the PRSAP. This month, August the 26th, we focus on the workers. But as always, we start with important dates in the history of African people and other progressive people.
Let's see. With our calendar dates, we're going to start with August 2nd. Marcus Garvey presides over the 8th UNIA Convention in Toronto in 1938. Chokwe Lumumba, activist, lawyer, and mayor of Jackson, Mississippi, was born in 1947. Under President Ahmed Sékou Touré, the Socialist Cultural Revolution begins in Guinea on August 2nd in 1968. On August 9th, we have International Day of Solidarity with the women of South Africa and Namibia. Over 20,000 African women on Women's Day protested against past laws in South Africa in 1956. August 11th, Africans in the U.S. set the city of Watts, California ablaze in protest against the racist capitalist system in 1965. On August 12th, Samir Amin, African Marxist, died in 2018. Also on that date, African Mine Worker Unions organized 70,000 people to strike against the mine owners in South Africa in 1946. On August 21st, the first major successful African liberation struggle began in Saint Domingue, Haiti in 1791. On that same day, Nat Turner led the largest slave revolt in Southampton, Virginia in 1831. So their brother George Jackson was murdered by U.S. fascist prison guards in 1971. And then on August 26th, the Southwest African People's Organization, SWAPO, began its armed struggle in Namibia in 1966. And on the 28th day of August, Emmett Till, 14-year-old African, was brutally tortured and murdered in Mississippi on this date in 1955. And finally, on that same day, March on Washington, the major civil rights protest in the U.S. was in 1963. Gimbal?
Okay. African workers globally have had their labor exploited by capitalists and imperialism for centuries. However, they have fought against these two related systems since their inception on slave plantations and colonial mines, at capitalist factories and plants. They have organized themselves relentlessly against these exploitations and oppressive systems. This struggle to dismantle these oppressive systems has also included the struggle to build socialism as well. This has most recently been seen in its support workers have provided the alliance of Sahel states, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, in their movement towards revolutionary Pan-Africanism. Indeed, such regional alliances are commendable steps forward, but our ultimate objective has to be a unified and socialist Africa, that is Pan-Africanism. Such an objective will ensure fair and just treatment for all global African workers. On the continent of Africa and throughout the African diaspora, Africans must organize to unite themselves in the entire African continent to ensure capitalism is completely destroyed and replaced with socialism. We will then be able to reap the benefits of a socialist economic system, which will include full employment, free health care, free education, and the provision of various social services that will ensure that all workers and social economic needs are met.
Now, Gimbal, whenever we hear workers, here we think about Marx and Lenin and labor and unions and workers and all of that. But I know that Nkrumah also has a very succinct way of looking at it for the continent of Africa. Can you give us a brief historical background on workers from an Nkrumah's ideology versus a Marxist perspective?
Okay, I will start with a little historical background. Nkrumah's philosophical analysis in conscientism, which is a book which Nkrumah wrote, was different from the Soviet Union and other nations, being that the majority of Africa were peasants, not industrial proletarians. The colonizers never wanted Africa to modernize or industrialize. The colonizers only wanted to use African resources to build up the Western world. First, the African workers were stolen into the Western Hemisphere and were classified as chattel, like a cow, a donkey, a monkey, or a wild animal. Enslaved Africans brought a wide range of vital agricultural, metallurgical, and artistical skills with them to the Americas. The chattel enslaved had skills such as carpenters, bricklayers, and iron makers. They built Washington, D.C. and many of the Western Hemisphere's towns and cities. The indigenous people, the settler colonizers, killed millions of natives they called Indians before they were able to settle in Indian stolen land. Second, at the Berlin Conference in 1884 to 1885, the colonial powers decided to stop fighting each other in Africa for its land and officially divided it up among themselves. The next big steal was Africa's natural resources and other natural goods that they wanted. This process of colonizers going into other non-European countries except Ireland in North America, South America, Latin America, and Asia, exploiting and oppressing lands and people. An update, more recent, during the Second World War, which the imperialist nation called World War II, The resulting consequences with Germany during the war was sending rockets across the English Channel and flattening Britain, bombing factories, schools, hospitals, bridges, and the nation's infrastructure. America dropped two atomic bombs on Japan. As the war ended, the major capitalist nations, led by the U.S., established institutions which served its interests: the UN, World Bank, World Trade Organization, IMF, NATO, etc. The U.S. decided to bail out its Western colonizers and implemented the Marshall Plan. The Marshall Plan gave loans to Western Europe to rebuild or modernize their nations back to pre-level or better sense. Now they have newer industries. Within a generation, Europe's heavy industries of auto and steel were competing with America on a worldwide scale. Okay. Sister Kim, we have a long time member of the Pan-African Revolutionary Party, Sister Kim, who will give you some facts about the powerful resistance African workers have made.
All right. I don't really believe that work is something any of us inherently want to do. However, we know that in order to take care of ourselves and our families and to succeed in life, that some energy and work must be done. When doing it, we do not want to be taken advantage of. However, under capitalism, that is exactly what happens. Since our capture, displacement, and enslavement, Africans have been whipped, beaten, brainwashed, oppressed, and exploited into submissively working for the profit of others just to exist in this world. So what do? We fight back. Our history as workers or laborers across America, the Caribbean, and Africa is a narrative of survival, rebellion, and systemic change. In all three regions, the labor movement served as a tool for negotiated workplace benefits, and it functioned as a vital vehicle for civil rights, anti-colonial resistance, and national liberation. In the U.S., the relationship between African workers and organized labor was based on structural exclusion and eventually developed into deep alignment. Early mainstream unions like the American Federation of Labor, or the AFL, routinely excluded African workers or segregated them into powerless groups. White unions often viewed African laborers as economic competitors. This systemic exclusion forced African workers to organize independently, starting with Isaac Myers, who founded the Colored National Labor Union in 1869. A. Philip Randolph, the civil rights leader, established in 1925 the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. It became the first African-led union to secure a charter from the AFL and win a landmark collective bargaining contract against the then powerful Pullman Railroad Company. This victory established a blueprint for economic self-determination. African trade unionists, as part of the Congress of Industrial Organizations, CIO, merged with the AFL, and they planned, funded, and provided the massive turnout for the 1963 March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. This helped lead to passing the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The credit unions, the self-help credit unions that we now use today, formed as a result. Today, African workers have the highest union representation rate of any racial demographic in the U.S., transforming unions into modern anchors for the quote-unquote African middle class. In the Caribbean, modern political parties and the push for independence from Europe were born directly out of labor unions in the 30s. Following the abolition of slavery, colonial plantation and industrial economies kept African Caribbean workers bound by low wages, high unemployment, and strict racial hierarchies. Without voting rights, workers relied on mutual aid societies and localized strikes. The Great Depression in 1929 triggered a historic wave of labor uprisings and strikes across the British West Indies. This included Jamaica, Trinidad, Tobago, and Barbados. Marcus Garvey helped to galvanize these movements and injected a potent sense of African consciousness into the labor demands that they wanted. The labor riots forced Great Britain to legally recognize trade unions. The labor leaders who emerged from these strikes used their union bases to form regional political parties like the Jamaica Labor Party, in Trinidad and Tobago, the Oil Field Workers Trade Union. Across the African continent, labor unions fought to challenge and ultimately overthrow European colonial rule and white minority regimes. Formal political parties for Africans were frequently banned. Consequently, trade unions for workers became the leaders for political resistance. Striking workers demanded higher wages, and they targeted the economic foundations of the colonizers' empire. High-profile labor disruptions included, in 1947, the French West African Railway strike, which crippled the infrastructure across Senegal, Mali, and Burkina Faso, forcing France to concede extensive legal and civil rights to African workers. In Ghana, when it was called the Gold Coast, Kwame Nkrumah collaborated closely with the Gold Coast Trade Union Congress with his Positive Action campaign of general strikes in 1950 to accelerate independence from Britain. Dismantling apartheid in South Africa. In 1985, the Congress of South African Trade Unions was formed. It organized massive general strikes, consumer boycotts, and civil disobedience that crippled the South African economy. Combined with international sanctions and help around the world, this massive internal labor resistance made the apartheid system entirely unprofitable and ungovernable, forcing the apartheid regime to negotiate and usher in democratic elections in 1994. Now, Gimbal, I know that was mostly males, but African women played a major role across Africa and the diaspora, and they did offer great organized resistance. African women during this time bore a dual burden. They were exploited simultaneously as racialized labor and as gendered labor, because the trade unions historically excluded them due to both racism and sexism. African female workers, developed specialized networks to spearhead their own labor resistance. African workers as a whole engineered groundbreaking resistance movements and independent labor unions to combat the capitalist extraction of their labor. Here in the U.S., African women were systematically restricted to domestic service, like maids, cooks, laundresses, as well as sharecropping, facing long hours, low pay, and rampant exploitation. African women experienced the double day. They performed intense physical labor for white families while managing unpaid domestic labor for their own families under duress. They were community groundwork. They served as the logistical backbone of labor strikes and civil rights organizing, leveraging the church and community networks to sustain long protests. A couple of key resistance movements was the Atlanta Washerwoman Strike in 1881. Just about 15 years after emancipation, 20 African laundresses formed the Washing Society. Within weeks, they organized 3,000 women to strike for standardized wages, successfully paralyzing the city of Atlanta and proving the political power of African women organizers. Then, in 1968, the National Domestic Workers Union of America was organized by Dorothy Bolden in Atlanta. This union rallied thousands of marginalized African household workers, still in 1968, marginalized African household workers, to demand standard labor protections, minimum wage inclusion, and voting rights. In the Caribbean, African women workers under slavery worked directly in the brutal sugarcane fields alongside men while simultaneously managing domestic tasks in the estate houses. They developed into the market women. In the post-emancipation era, African women dominated the informal market economies. They served as street vendors and traders. They bypassed plantation control to build independent economic networks. Today, multinational corporations target Caribbean women for low wages, non-unionized textile assembly and hospitality jobs. One of the biggest resistance movements was called Fireburn. It took place in St. Croix in 1878. It was led by an African woman named Mary Thomas. They nicknamed her Queen Mary. Plantation workers on the island of St. Croix revolted against predatory post-emancipation labor contracts and burned down over half of the town of Frederiksted to demand free wages. Frederiksted is where people go now in St. Croix to vacation. In Africa, the role of African women workers was to maintain the state of living for its people. There was a subsistence preservation when the colonial head tax was forced on African men to migrate to urban centers for corporate, mining, and the like. African women were left to single-handedly maintain rural agricultural economies and ensuring the survival of the community. In West Africa, women formed powerful market associations, like the market women of Lagos and Accra, gaining complete control over the internal food distribution systems and financial credit services. Some of the key resistance movements that happened in Africa was the Aba Women's War in 1929, where thousands of Igbo women in Nigeria organized a massive, highly coordinated economic revolt against British colonial taxation and exploitation of the palm oil prices. They used a tactic called sitting on a man. They did this by censoring the colonial offices through public song and protest, forcing everyone to stay away. This dismantled the colonial warrant office system. Also, there was the Federation of South African Women in 1954. They organized multiracial labor and political resistance, which ended in the 1956 Women's March, where 20,000 women protested the passed laws designed to control African migrant labor. In Brazil, South America, the women were ganaderas. They were the earners. During and after slavery, ganaderas were enslaved African women, some of them freed, who worked in the urban centers selling food, textiles, as well as washing clothes. They used their collective earnings to purchase their freedom, not just theirs, but the freedom of other African workers. One of the resistance movements during that time was the Colombo resistance. African workers escaped capitalist mining sugar plantations to form self-sustaining independent maroon communities, the Colombos. Dandara of Palmares was a fierce female warrior who helped lead the military and economic defense of the largest Colombo against Portuguese forces. There were many more like this. And it's just fantastic to know that our people revolted against exploitation and oppression from the time we were in Africa to capture to here until now. But you know something, Gimbal? It seemed like little progress had started to happen. A perception of a middle class was forming. Can you tell us what happened next? Because that period seemed not that long. And now all the industries are gone. Can you enlighten us on that for workers?
Yeah, to answer that question, Sister Kim, powerful monopolies and financial oligarchies actively competed with one another on the international stage for raw materials, investment markets, and colonial territories. I'll tell you a story about how capitalists are not patriotic to the nation they claim their home office is in, but only to profit for money. I was working at McGraw Glass Plant around 1997, making $20 an hour, and I trained down Saturday, overtime $30 an hour on Sunday, overtime $40 an hour. People was wondering why I would do that. So the first, I told them that I was working two jobs, and the first job I was running production on the line with them at Chrysler for 40 hours a week. And my second job was going to Wayne State University and studying for my classes. So that's what my two jobs was. The capitalists at Chrysler have a glass plant in Mexico, and the workers make $1.25 per hour. In Detroit, we make $20 an hour. And I was talking to the 10 to 15 young students, young adults, predicting that in less than 5 years, Chrysler McGraw Glass Plant would be shut down from cheaper labor. What the American auto industry and many other companies have been doing is shipping jobs to China and Mexico and the southern U.S. for cheaper labor. One recent year, General Motors was selling 3 times more autos in China than America Ford, Chrysler, and all types of multinational corporations are in China and Mexico today.
Wow, that was some good income for workers. I can imagine that shutting down those plants and moving jobs elsewhere had on workers, families, and those cities just total devastation.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, as Kim, okay, we were starting to see some positive action happening in Africa with controlling resources and collaborating trade with Caribbean. Are there any progressive actions that are taking place in the African world today to highlight?
Wow. Number one on the list is the AES, the Alliance of Sahel States, consisting of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. They have been moving forward with joint military actions and opening of trade with each other. Burkina Faso is developing its own research and development and application of scientific farming. They're developing natural pest control where chickens are devouring pests, so they don't have to worry about pesticides in the Sahel. Farming productivity has risen. Economic growth is on the rise. They even ensure that 30% of the chickens go to women-led households. In Burkina Faso, their informal employment sector remains the dominant source of employment, accounting for 95% of all jobs, like road building and construction. They are moving forward. Agriculture is the largest employment sector, engaging up to 66% of the working population. Tomatoes growing in Africa is a big deal, but processing them is a problem, but not in the Sahel, in Burkina Faso. Processing of tomatoes has grown, and no more importing tomato paste and sauce from outside of Africa because they're doing it right there. Oh, Gimbal, we firmly believe that capitalism and imperialism are detrimental to Africans. What are some of the benefits socialism will bring the African masses?
One, the sole purpose of our revolution, the African Revolution, is to improve our people's living standard. 2, to make tuition free, high quality education for all Africans, no matter where they happen to be born or live in the world. 3, in all forms of gender oppression and exploitation. 4, to make quality health care right for all African people. 5, to guarantee a living wage job for all Africans. 6, to reestablish our own unique African culture. 7, to restore the African personality. 8, smash the capitalist prison industrial war machine. 9, to solidify our continental unification, thereby making a contribution worldwide to peace and justice and to worldwide socialism.
Yes.
Okay. And join us next month, September the 26th, when our focus will be on the effects a united socialist Africa will have on African women at home and abroad.
Meanwhile, visit our website, Pan-African Revolutionary Socialist Party.org. Email us at panafricanrsp@gmail.com. Like us on soundcloud.com. Visit us on YouTube.
Remember, organization is the key. Join us, the Pan-African Revolutionary Socialist Party, or some other revolutionary Pan-African socialist organization. A union of African socialist states is on the horizon.
Hey yo, Mr. Big Fat Cat Boss, your company makes millions of pounds a year. When you gonna give the workers their fair share? Give the workers more of the profit, cause you got it. Yes, you got it. Give the workers more of your profit, cause you got it. Yes, you got it. Hey, Mr. Big Man, I make all the profit. You make all the profit in your own pocket. Oh, what about the workers? Of them should I get it from the ones in the office to the one with the bucket? They make the profit. They should get some of it. Put some of the profit in their beer pocket. When them 65, you get them a watch or a lock it. Stop it. Got the people now take it. Give the workers more of your profit. Cause you got it. Yes, you got it. Give your workers more of your profit. Cause you got it. Yes, you got it. All the workers make the profit go up so fast. And all the workers come and work 8 o'clock sharp. And all the workers come and work without breakfast. And all the workers I do all the hard work. Company made a profit. They never make a loss. And the younger one to get a pay rise was the boss. They never give a rise to the rest of the staff. The boss him a laughing by another race horse. Give the workers more of your profit. Cause you got it. Yes, you got it. Give the workers more of your profit. All of the workers, listen. If all is not well, rebel and give them hell. Stand up for your rights and yell. If all is not right, strike and give them a fight. Cause they can't treat the workers just so them like. More pay, where the workers are asked for more pay. No to slave labor, more pay. Increase the wages, more pay. Help with the mortgage, more pay. More cooperation, more pay. In line with inflation, more pay. Share out the wealth, you can't want all of the money for yourself. Give the workers more of your profit, cause you got it. Yes, you got it. Give your workers more of your profit, cause you got it. Yes, you got it. Hey, Mr. Big Man, I make all the profit. You make all the profit in your own pocket. And what about the workers? Of them should I make it from the ones in the office to the one with the bucket? They might make the profit. They should get some of it. Put some of the profit in their beer pocket. And when they sit to fight, they get them a watch or a lock it. Stop it. Cause the worker not take it. Give the workers more of your profit. Cause you got it. Yes, you got it. Give your workers more of your profit. All of the workers. If all is not well, rebel and give them hell. Stand up for your rights and yell. If all is not right, strike and give them a fight. Cause they can't treat the workers just so them like. More pay, where the workers are asked for more pay. No to slave labor, more pay. Increase the wages, more pay. For help with the